Welcome. From my heart to yours, welcome. So lovely to have you here. See a couple new faces, so welcome to you. Welcome. So a announcement, the next online retreat will be May 12th through the 14th. And so I do hope that you can join us for that. These retreats are, of course, a very powerful opportunity to awaken to your highest nature, opportunity to heal and to forgive and to let go that which is no longer serving you. And so please join us. So this year, I'm facing one of my fears, and I'm offering a retreat right at the end of Mercury in retrograde. And so at some point, I just realized that Mercury is a part of our life. It's a part of our life. And so I hope you can join. If you have time in your schedule, we'd love to have you. We'd love to have you. Okay. Another announcement is just a reminder to some of the new folks. If you ever have a question and you want to ask it via email for Satsang, please send it in on Sunday. That's best. And it's best if you send it in an hour or two before the meeting, but anytime on Sunday is pretty good. If you send it other times in the week, it might get lost because I do get so many emails. But anyways, I'd love to hear from you. Okay. The third announcement in July, that's a ways out. I'll be at the Kripalu Yoga Center in Massachusetts, July 14th through the 21st. And for an in-person retreat. And I'd love to have you there. That one's going to be extra powerful, just being there in that way. So good. Okay. So let us shut down our eyes, open our hearts. And today, we're going to explore the topic of grace and faith. And so I invite you to open your hearts, to open your crown chakra, and let us together call forth a descent of grace. Calling forth a descent of grace to come into your life, to come into your body as a relaxing, letting go of any mental activity in the mind, the third eye area. And instead of thinking, I invite you simply to feel. So noticing awake awareness in the crown chakra. You may notice a very subtle shift out of egoic identification and into opening to grace. So can you just imagine just opening in your crown and the space of the mind? And I invite you to welcome the grace of the Divine Mother coming into you, flowing into you. And you can speak to her and say hello. You can say, they need some love. I'm needing some help with forgiveness. I need some help trusting. I could use some support with strength. Or some greater peace. And so I can feel her energies just flowing down into the room. And so let us be receptive to this. And then again, if you need something personal and specific on this path, maybe even just help settling into your heart. And so can you open and receive? So the best way to receive grace is when we breathe deeply and fully, gently surrendering and opening, adopting very humble attitude and sense of self in the heart and in the lower belly. And in a humble way, we can admit that being human is hard. Often it's messy. So many of us fight for a seat at the table among other egos. And instead, what I'm going to invite you to imagine is that we are all children of the Most High. We're all children of the Divine Mother. And even though we are calling out to her, she's actually calling out to us, welcoming us to the table, where she has prepared a meal for you of love, of light, of peace, surrender, forgiveness, compassion. And so will you breathe deeply and humbly, connecting to a place of innocence. So as you breathe in and breathe out, you notice a softening, the space of the mind, a letting go of any mental turmoil, softening and opening in the heart. And you may notice just a very subtle trickle of light coming down through the crown, the third eye, the throat, into the heart. Transforming any heavy emotions. And we're opening. We're receiving. We're putting our egoic identification on the back burner and giving ourselves permission to receive. Something greater. Something greater. And so again, you just feel into your human self and your spiritual path, gently asking, well, what would be greater? What type of support do I need? Some of us, our nervous system is so amped up and overly stimulated. We need help settling down. For some of us, we become sleepy on the path and we need help reconnecting to that which is good and true and beautiful about ourselves and others and the grace of the Divine Mother. Some of us need to forgive ourselves or forgive another, and more patience or self-love. And just noticing what you feel directly in your body, the chakra centers. As you open in the heart, you can open in the solar plexus and the hara, the pelvis and the hips, and just invite this grace from heaven to flow all the way down, blessing the entirety of our body, healing, nurturing, and then flowing into the earth itself, waking up the earth. Waking up the earth. Waking up you, healing you, healing, blessing, and awakening the consciousness of the earth. This most holy blessing. We can take a couple more deep breaths, and again, just noticing anywhere you're tight or tense. Allowing grace to flow in any tension. Healing, awakening, shifting, transforming. And even smiling, because by now, you should be feeling something quite beautiful. Something quite beautiful. And so will you join me in just having a sense of gratitude for this grace? A sense of bowing before the Divine Mother. We have gratitude, we have praise, and a sense of bowing before the Divine Mother. A sense of Namo Namaha. Namo Namaha. Which basically means I bow before you. And so, we're getting in touch with grace. And now I'm going to invite us just to shift gears a little bit. And I'm going to bring forward some inquiry questions. And so you can keep your eyes closed. But if I ask you, what is your relationship with God? And please, no one trip over the word God. By God, we mean the energy of compassion, the intelligence of the universe. This is a mother lineage, and so talking about the warmth and compassion and love and support of the Divine Mother. What is your relationship with the Divine Mother? Do you know her? Do you know God? Do you feel close to God? Do you speak to God? Do you communicate to God? Some of us, we do a silly thing. We barter with God. We say, if I'm good, if I change this one thing, will you bring me a new partner, a new house, or whatever it is? God doesn't really play the bartering game. The Divine Mother is actually here to serve you. She's here to serve you. Do you know this? That the Divine is here to serve you. Or do you think of yourself purely as an individual fighting Again, amongst egos for a seat at an egoic table. Do you know that God has prepared a path for you? Very specific path. With specific gifts, specific challenges. Are you open to and connect and call upon support? Do you praise the divine? Do you just ask for material things, for God to do all the work? Or are you willing to listen to the grace of God, the intelligence of the divine? In fact, in this moment, if you open more fully, an intimate way, a heartfelt way, you open yourselves to special instructions right here and now. Instructions on your next step on the path, how to respond to a certain situation, something that's troubling you. If you open in a silent and humble way, I invite you to ask the divine and see what comes. See what comes. And again, can we smile, seeing, acknowledging that grace is here, intelligence is here, love is here, compassion is here. And so again, I'll ask you some more questions. Do you know the voice of God, the voice of grace, the voice of the divine, in comparison to the voice of your own egoic nature, judgmental mind? Can you tell the difference? And if you struggle, are you willing to play, to dance, to open, get to know God, to know her wisdom and her way of communicating? I'll just give you a little couple hints. It's never judgmental, never harsh, always short and sweet. It can be quite powerful. It doesn't come with a dissertation. It's short and simple. Often feels like a gentle wind blowing through our consciousness, this wisdom. So do you know this voice? Often you'll feel this intelligence, this grace, this wisdom flowing in you from above, or actually you might hear it from within the space of the heart. So what is the divine here telling you this day, this evening? And if you feel into your experience, do you have faith in this grace? Sometimes the divine is silent. Do you have faith that she will come? That she will respond? That she is here in your life? That she does hear you? Or do any of us doubt in the grace? Do we close off from the grace? Are we afraid of the grace? And do we have faith or do we doubt? Do we have faith or do we argue? Do we have faith and open, or do we close down and just listen to our egoic nature, repeating the past again and again? And so you just gently open your eyes. And again, I hope some of you are smiling. I hope you feel close to the divine. Well, I had this wonderful opportunity to get out of town this weekend, and I ran off to the desert. And I have a good friend who lives out in the desert, and he doesn't really have a phone. He doesn't have electricity. He lives in the tent in the desert, and a good friend of mine. And he rock climbs all the time, and I just go out and visit him every now and then. And he takes me climbing. But it's a problem because when I go out there, this is the first time this season, so I haven't really talked to him, and I'm just hoping he's out there. There's no cell service where we go climbing. It's way out in the desert. We climb outside of what's called Bear's Ear now. It used to be called Indian Creek. It's right outside Canyonlands, the southern entrance to Canyonlands National Park. It's one of the least visited national parks because it's just so far from anything. And so anyways, I went out there, and I wasn't sure what was going to happen. So I sat in my van. I camped out by myself the first night because I couldn't find him. And the next morning I just went and sat basically at the bottom of a place we go climbing together. And there's literally 10,000 climbs out there, but I picked one of the places, the most popular place. And I just sat there. And I waited and I waited, and I read my book. And at some point I said, maybe I should say a prayer here. Maybe I should call upon some grace and just see, because it was looking pretty grim. It's looking like, I guess I'm not going to go rock climbing. And so, I sat there and I just started to pray. I said, God, will you connect me with my friend? Will you help me, just come into contact with him. And I said, I would like to go climbing. I'd like to get out. Like, he's a really good friend for me because he takes me out on these big adventures, and he really challenges me and pushes me beyond my limits. And he just has this lovely connection to the desert, to the earth, a beautiful presence. And he's like this wonderful wild energy. He's a fella who's he's got a little bit of Crow, Indian in him, and Apache. He told me his grandparents met at one of those rehabilitation schools, is what he called it. They took the kids away from their tribes and just sent them off somewhere and told them not to be Indians anymore. He's a wonderful, wonderful man. And anyways, so I was praying. I said, God, will you connect me? Connect me with my friend Devin. And again, so I was just sitting there and sitting there and sitting there. And I said, okay, I'll wait till 10:30. And then if not, I said, God, just give me the highest day, the greatest day. Like, bring me something greater. And I invite your grace to come into my life, to come into my experience, to come into this day. And then right at 10:30, he showed up. And I just smiled. Like right at the last moment, right when I was going to turn away and go off on a hike by myself, which would have been lovely as well. Because I said, God, I'm willing to do whatever is the highest. So you lead me, you guide me, you show me. I do have a request. I'd like to go rock climbing. And even that, like, I'm a little nervous about, because I'm still, my body's not 100%. I'm getting over long COVID. I'd like to say I'm healed, but this week showed me otherwise. I had a really tough week with my health. And so he took me out on this climb, and he had a friend with him, another professional climber. And here I am. I'll just tell you, I'm not very good at climbing. And somehow God has connected me with two pro climbers is who I get to climb with. And like, I'm so gifted. Somehow in life, it's a grace that I've been given, is often God connects me with master beings in whatever it is that I'm doing. And I find it so fortunate. Like, I met my teacher, who's an incredible master, when I was, quite young, 18. And I've met all these other masters of spirituality just throughout the planet, enlightened beings. And I have these friends who I go rock climbing with, and they're master rock climbers, and they're professionals. I am not. And so we went on one climb. There's just a warm up, and I was like, okay, like, that was good. That was very hard. And I was like, I'm done. Then my friend Devin, he put up this route, and it was one of the hardest climbs I'd ever even seen, just looking at it. The type of climbing we do is crack climbing and off with climbing, which again, I don't want to get into the details, but you take your hands and you jam it into these cracks. And so you pull yourself up. And then sometimes you get in bigger cracks with your whole body, and you kind of have to shimmy your way up. Very difficult, very awkward type of climbing. And this is a brand new climb that he put up. It's called a first ascent. And so he put it up, and he really struggled with it. And again, he's a professional. This is what he does. He's one of the best in the area where we go climbing. And his friend Pam, she climbed up it. She had a real heck of a time too. And I was just very happy to be outside, to be staring at the big blue sky, and the getting the sunburn, the hot desert sun, and seeing the snow-capped mountains in the distance. I was just having a very lovely day. And my friend Devin said, "Okay, Craig, now your turn." And I was like, no, I don't feel great, and I already did one climb. That's enough for me. He's like, no, Craig, come on. Like, let's see you. I want to get you up this. And this was way out of my league. My friend Devin, he has this gift, and he has a power about him. He has a grace about him. He's an incredible teacher, an incredible coach. And he has faith in me. Faith. And me, I didn't really have much faith. I have great faith on the spiritual path. But, I don't always have that much faith in my physical abilities. Like, I'm very mediocre, in physical strength and, sports and these types of things, any kind of activity I do. And besides meditation, spirituality, I am very mediocre. And I said, okay, I'll just try. But even just beginning the climb, like the first like the beginning of the climb, I looked at it, I said, I don't even think I can get onto the climb itself. It looks way too difficult for me to even begin it. Like, that's how hard it was. Like, if we climb, I had my phone here. When I post it on YouTube, I'll put a video, an image of it. But we climbed it. Basically, it's a vertical wall, and it's a really messy crack. And I said, this is out of my league, Devin. I cannot do this. He said, Craig, try. He said, I'll coach you through it. So this is what a good spiritual teacher does. Because they look at you and they see your strength. They see your divinity first and foremost. And they have total faith in that. This is the thing my spiritual teacher did. All my teachers have done. Is they looked at me and they had faith in something that I could not see. And the job of the teacher, is to support that. It's this type of faith where you see something greater than what presents itself. And as we look at our own lives, like when we're on the path and we don't have a teacher, when we don't have support, we don't have a good sangha, when no one is cheering us on, it's very easy just to kind of give into our egoic nature and be like, this is all I got. This is all I got. This is as far as I could go. It's very easy to throw in the towel when it's just you and you, just you and that old mind. Very easy. Very easy. But when you are around spiritual greats, when you're around anyone great, their greatness rubs off on you. It inspires you. It helps you to have faith. Like, in order to be great, you have to have faith in something greater than what's already here. This is what faith is. It's a belief in something greater, that there's another way besides the way of your own egoic will and egoic strength. There's another way. And so I tried, to get on this, get on this rock, and I failed. I failed like probably 10 or 15 times just to get my feet off the ground. Like that's how hard it was. This was a 140-foot climb. And again, it's just like, there's no way. And he just kept inviting me to try again. And one of the things I did is I said, okay, I'm going to keep trying. And I'm going to see if I can just get up maybe 10 feet. And then I'll just say, okay, I tried. I got up 10 feet. And then I asked him to lower me back down again. And I'd be done. I'd just go back to, meditating and relaxing or whatever. And I'll just enjoy, being in the company, watching these two climb. And so I put my forehead against the rock. I said, God, you climb through me. So again, this is another form of faith. This faith where we say, God, will you help me here? And then there's this other type of faith where we surrender to God. We invite God to come in to us, to move through us, to live through us, to act through us. And as soon as I said that, I began climbing. I began making some progress. And I made it up, with great struggle still, but I made it up, 10 feet. And I was like, oh my God, that was so hard. So hard to get up 10 feet. But I felt this silent power within me. So when we call upon grace, when we have faith, we start to plug into this other type of power. Again, it's not egoic power. It's not the energy of will. Now, you may still need all of your egoic power and your physical power, but it's like being plugged into another source of energy, an additional source of energy. And so about every 2 or 3 feet, it was hard, ridiculously hard. And I did my best not to look up to see how far away, like at the very top are the chains where you plug your rope into and you can be lowered down in a really safe way. I tried my best not to look up. Not to look up, because sometimes when we look up, if we're on the path and we say, how far am I? How far am I to, say, the land of, let's have some fun here, enlightenment? How far am I from the land of truth? The space of unconditional love. If we look, we might say, oh my God, it's really, really far. But there's this teaching in the realm of faith is God's just asking you to take the next step in front of you. The next step. The next step. And so for a lot of my path, I had this great ideal of enlightenment. My teacher used to tell me, he said, Craig, just look at what is the next step in front of you. That's all you need to do. And then he used to say something else. He said, you take one step to God, and God takes 10 steps toward you. One step, and God takes 10 steps. And I like that. I like that type of math. I'll do one step, and grace will show me that God is going to take 10 steps, and God's going to do the heavy lifting. Now, from an egoic perspective, like normally in the beginning of the path, it still seems like we're doing the heavy lifting. As we mature on the path, we see that God did the heavy lifting the whole time. We just didn't realize it. And all the efforting was us efforting and fighting against our own resistance. Our own resistance. I can tell you, I was out, again on this climb, and I fought for every inch of that. Every inch of it. Every inch of this climb. And about every 5 feet, I was ready to give up. And I kept putting my forehead against the rock, praying for strength, praying for God to climb through me. Now down below, again, I had my friend, my coach, telling me exactly where to put my hands, exactly where to move my feet. Now, the beautiful thing about my friend, who's a master climber, and he spent, more than 2 decades climbing the cracks of Indian Creek. He climbed this thing one time, maybe twice before. And all 140 feet of the climb, he's down, like way down, like low on the ground. He's actually even lower than the starting point because we have to climb up like a really steep hill. It's a bluff, and then the climb goes up. And so he actually stands down here and he hollers at me, telling me where to put my right hand and my left hand, my right foot, my left foot, all the way up. And he can't see. He can't see into the crack, but he knows it that intimately because he's so connected to the earth, to the land, to the climb. It's like magic being with him. Being with a spiritual master is the same way. They see things you don't see. They tell you where to step. They tell you where to let go. They remind you where to open, where to surrender. And he'd tell me, reach inside deep. And he said, you'll find a pocket there to stick your hand. And I'd reach my hand deep in the crack. And there was the pocket. There was the hold. And I thought, is God, speaking through him? Is the rock actually changing? Because it seemed like there'd be these very teeny places. Like sometimes you hold on to something like this big, just with the very tip of your fingers, or and there it was, time and time again. There was support. There was support. Something showed up. I would look again and I'd find a hold that wasn't there before. This is how it is on the path. When you have a good teacher who has faith in you, when you have faith in yourself, when you have faith in God, it's like having a superpower. My teacher used to call it having a silent friend. There was so much grace and energy and light in his presence. And sometimes I would praise my teacher. I'd say, oh my God, it's so amazing, your presence. And he'd always remind me, he said, well, I have a silent friend. I have a silent friend that is here, flowing through me. And my invitation to each of you is, do you have a silent friend? I can say with a big smile and an open heart, I certainly have a silent friend. I certainly have a silent friend. I have been so blessed by this grace in my life. This friendship, it will deepen the greater faith you have, the greater connection you will have with the divine. will deepen. And so anyways, at the at the end of the day, and I made it up this climb, and I was so utterly shocked. So utterly shocked. And also not shocked at all, because I knew that God did the climb. All 140 feet of it. God did the climb. God did it. God climbed through me and as me. And so the whole way up, I prayed. The whole way down, I praised. Praise the divine. And this is how it's been in my life. My life has certainly not been easy in any way. I've had countless struggles. In fact, again, I can say this climb I did the best climb I've ever done in my life yesterday. And I have long COVID. So I look at God and I'm in utter amazement of what is possible through grace, what is possible through faith. And this energy of faith, this energy of exuberance, this energy of enthusiasm, which means in theos, in God, in grace. And I'm thankful for my climbing partner and the support and his power, the power of his mind, the power of his heart, his strength, his divinity, his connection to the earth. All of that helps to open me, because again, like I was ready to sit there on the side of the cliff, just looking out the vast vista, eating some chocolate. I would have been satisfied with that. And that's the thing with our egoic nature. It is satisfied with the status quo. It's satisfied with not being much of anything but an ego. When you surround yourself by greatness, and when they have faith, their faith rubs off on you. When they can see something beautiful in you, something strong within you, something capable within you, it's so empowering. So empowering. But for many of us, again, when we're left alone with a judgmental ego, a sabotaging voice. We're left alone with something that's insecure, something that cannot see how beautiful we are, how strong we are, how compassionate we are, how holy we are. The voice of our egoic nature looks out at life in a way where we see ourselves as not whole, not complete. We look out at ourselves, like when we look in the mirror, we see a deficit. We see I'm too big, I'm too little, I'm too this, I'm too that. And I encourage you to play with this. Can you see greatness in yourself? Can you see greatness in God, in the divine? Can you see greatness in the vast blue sky, the vast night sky? Can you see greatness in unity and love and compassion in this beautiful earth? And then can you share this vision, this smile, this love, this compassion, this peace, this vastness with your neighbor? Can you share it? Can you share it? Excuse me. If this world is going to change, if we're going to stop killing each other, we're going to stop judging each other, stop attacking each other. I mean, heck, I've got a little girl, and sometimes little girls can be so mean on the playground. On the playground. I think I said this last time. My little girl comes home with these stories of how mean the kids are. It's just heartbreaking to me. Heartbreaking. Little girls, big girls, little people, big people. I mean, we play these games of manipulation, of ostracizing, of excluding, of intimidating, of people play these pecking order games or power games. Life doesn't have to be like this. We can support each other. We can love each other. We can lift each other up. That's one of the reasons, I go out rock climbing. I'm not even certain I like rock climbing so much, but I just love being with my friend, and I love being in the desert, and I love the emptiness, the silence, and my friend, he's just this wild energy of exuberance. And he challenges me, he pushes me, he opens me into something much greater. Much, much greater. And we all have a need for this, like deep within our spirit. We are evolutionary beings. We are not meant to be static. We are beings which are meant to grow, to evolve, to expand, to break down the walls of limitation. Many of you in the group are kundalini people, and this is the very energy of kundalini. It's here to break down the walls of limitation. This energy of grace is here to break down the walls of limitation. We are literally the evolving edges of God, evolving edge of God. So it's a great invitation here. Great invitation. Can we step into something greater? Greater mind, greater emotional nature. Can we step into Buddha nature? Know ourselves as this vast, spacious freedom. Beautiful, loving, Christ-like heart. Unconditional strength and power. Can we step into this? Can we walk in this direction? And so many people on the spiritual path, I've come to realize, don't have faith that it's possible to awaken in this lifetime, don't have faith in their own healing. And yet they show up, and they show up in the silent act of showing up. That's faith. That's faith. But it can be helpful to supercharge your faith, to get your thoughts, your feelings, your emotional nature behind your faith. Behind your faith. So to be intentional about the path. And so when we have faith and we call upon grace and grace responds, this is the way. This is the way. To have faith and to call upon grace. Call upon the energy of intelligence, of love, of compassion, of forgiveness, of strength, nobility to flow into us, to transform us from the inside out. This is the way. Now, sometimes I meet people who think the way is to do it all with will. And sometimes we can get pretty far. Like if we're very disciplined, we can get pretty far with will in the beginning. But then God tends to do a funny dance with us. At some point on the path, God says, okay, well done with the discipline thing. Well done with your will. Now let's see how you operate when I take away your will. And sometimes God will give us like a bout of depression, or God will give us exhaustion or fatigue, or, a long-term sickness, like long COVID or Lyme disease. Like sometimes on the spiritual path, we get these mystery illnesses and ailments. And these things are ways of breaking us further, breaking our will, so that a greater will can come forward, a divine will can come forward, so that we can develop faith. So we can develop faith. That we can open in a humble way. It's a very hard teaching when God does this to us. And some of us say, well, I have great discipline. Isn't that a good thing? And again, it's a good thing in the beginning. I had great discipline in the beginning. Great will. And at some point, God took away the will and threw me into the void. And again, like when we're in the void, what do? Do we give up? Do we fall into despair? Or do we walk forward in the truth, despite not knowing the way, despite not having any energy, despite every voice in our ego saying, there's nothing here for you? And in a sense, there's a truth to that. There's nothing here for the ego, but there's something here for your heart if you keep walking, keep opening, continuing to have faith, even when it seems like the most foolish thing to do ever. I can tell you that faith and grace has carried me on the entirety of this path. The entirety. I'd like to say I had some, what's the word? Responsibility, is that the word? That I deserve some credit, but I don't. I don't. I just had lots of faith and lots of grace, lots of faith and lots of grace. So anyways, if anyone has a question, please bring it forward. If anyone has something they want to share, like in the comments section, please bring it forward. You have to forgive me, because if you emailed a question, I didn't get it. I didn't see it. I apologize. I ran off to the desert this weekend and just got back. Okay. Yeah, let's hear from Don. Let's see if I can do this. Are you here, Don?
Yeah, thank you, Craig. Wow, I love the allegory of faith in your rock climbing and faith in the spiritual path. I just wanted to share briefly. I've been meaning to do this for a few weeks, but it was time to. Black church I used to be part of. They called it testifying. So I want to testify.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
today.
Testified. All right.
Yeah, thank you, Jesus. And I'm Jewish.
Yeah.
So I was saying to Jan today, it's been 3 months. We've been part of the Satsang. So some of the external changes we've made, we now have 3 retreat nights, 3 quiet nights, no screens. We read through Craig's Yoga of Liberation to each other. And we're working on Fully Human, Fully Divine. And I wrote Craig recently, I in the morning, I do my trampoline bouncing and push-ups and kettlebells, watching the satsangs. But those are external. But the deeper thing is, many years ago, before many of you were born, I started with Nondual and Maharishi, and the next year I found Ramakrishna, and I just love his ecstatic love of the Divine Mother. And it's a few years later, I found Aurobindo, who brought both these together. So I've been part of that community for 47 years.
Yeah.
And for some reason, they have this thing about non-dual. They're against it. We just surrender to the mother. So you're either intellectual or you're religious. We don't practice. The mother will do it for us, but they talk about it. And so I speak there, and I'm surprised they even asked me to speak because I give them a hard time about it. So I really kind of, at age 70, I came to the point where I feel like I'd never find a teaching in this line that brought this all together. So I wanted to share one more thing about it, that one thing I love so much about Craig's teaching, like tonight, it's so down to earth, and it's so much in this extraordinary time of transition. It's so much what's needed right now. I mean, this is just this integration of faith and effort and grace, and it just crosses all boundaries. And the last thing I'll say, very last thing, I promise. We saw a talk recently where Craig had gone to Adyashanti and said, well, how do I teach? I don't know these philosophies, right? I'd say, I know the philosophies. I know people in the Aurobindo world who know them. I know like dozens of them, and I've skimmed through thousands of books. Believe me, you don't want that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I will say, Craig, if you want to challenge, someday I want to hear you give a talk on the Life Divine, which is Aurobindo's impossible to read book on
Sure.
philosophy. So there's your challenge.
Sure. Okay. Thanks,
Well,
Don.
thank
Yeah.
you so much.
It's so nice to have you both. Yeah. Have you both
Oh,
on the song.
we are
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
so grateful. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course. Of course. Yeah. It's a funny thing when, like with a lot of spiritual traditions, people latch on to the words, they latch on to the philosophies, and they get stuck on that. And in a sense, it's a very safe place for the ego to be in charge, where we're thinking a lot and we're memorizing and we're kind of getting all the theories and the philosophies just right. And when I visited the Aurobindo ashram, I saw there was a tremendous amount of that, just like people who were 100% in their head. But when I went to the Maha Samadhi, of Aurobindo, and I believe they're buried right on top of each other. I could be wrong about that, but I believe that's the case. And there's this little courtyard, and I walked into that courtyard, and my heart was just blown open. Just with such grace and such bliss. There was such exquisite bliss. And what's funny to me is when people are in the philosophical world, it's dry, it's boring, it's dead. Like it's like the opposite of bliss. And people make this mistake in so many traditions. I've seen Christians make it. I've seen, Muslims make it. I've seen, yogis make it. They get stuck in the philosophy. They get stuck on the words. And for me, my teacher told me the first, most important thing is your experience. We know God first. We have the experience of grace first. We open to this grace. And so that's what this path is about, is us opening to grace, opening to our direct experience. Even if we're good, like non-dual people, good Buddhists, or whatever, we open to the direct experience of our heart, of true nature, of our vast and spacious mind. If we don't have that, it's like we can read all the books in the world, but it's like, what's the point? What's the point? What is the point? And the thing is our heart is so desiring this, craving this grace, this light, this direct experience of unity. We will not feel complete unless our heart is open, unless our mind is free, unless we are connected to the ground of being. like we'll feel as if we're just living and suffering. And so the gift that I was born with was, I would call God's name and she would appear. I call the name of Jesus, and Jesus would appear. And again, not as a man in robes hanging out in my room, but in my heart. In my heart. And that's one of the things I want to communicate, because I've traveled and I've taught in a lot of different places throughout the country. And I realize not many people open to grace, connect to grace, have a conversation with God. Too many people are just in their heads and their minds and their books. And sometimes we can get so good at reading, we can like think our way into a realm that's kind of there, kind of like some level of like some mental analytical realm, but there might be some level of purity there, spaciousness there. A lot of Buddhists are good at this. A lot of Nondual people are good at it. Aurobindo, philosophical people are good at kind of this. But when grace comes into your life, like when it comes into your life, it is ground shaking. It's ground shaking. Now, the problem with a lot of people is because they have so much doubt, so much resistance, or so much just identification with their ego, when grace starts to come, we dismiss it. And here is this immense force, the force of creation, the force of awakening, the force of healing, the force of compassion, is trying to make its way into all of us. And we think we know better. Or, I hate to say this will sound harsh. I'm going to say it this way. This will sound very harsh, but we hate ourselves so much that we don't even think it's possible. Again, that brings tears to my eyes. When I first started teaching, I saw that most folks, they don't believe that they're divine. That's what I mean by they hate themselves so much. They don't believe, they don't know, they have no connection to their own divinity. They have no faith in their divinity. And so they have just total faith in ego. And in their ego, it's insecure, there's doubt, there's hatred, there's judgment, there's, I wish I wasn't this way type of feeling. And it's just heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. And the crazy thing is too, and I have angels that come to me and they say, we wake these people up, let them know we are here, we're wanting to serve. We are right here wanting to serve. Now, the Divine Mother, like she's wanting to come into you. She's wanting nothing more than to live through you. And again, for the kundalini people, it's like God is literally giving birth in you, literally giving, like trying to rage through your body, through your nervous system. And most people still identify with their ego and fight against it, judge it, and say, it's not, it can't really happen to me. Spiritual awakening can't really happen to me. But for some reason, like we might, some people think of this as arrogance, but to believe that you are God is not an arrogant thing. It requires supreme humility. Supreme humility to surrender your egoic nature and to open to your divinity, to open to this tenderness, this innocence, this purity. It takes supreme humility to open to this. And to me, as a kid, it felt so wonderful to open to this tender heart that I had. It's so wonderful to let my mind expand and be as big as the sky. It felt like hell to identify with the little character who has to fight for his own existence, has to guard and defend himself. as every other human on planet Earth. And so I encourage each of you to open your heart, to open your belly, to open your mind, and experience the beauty and innocence that you are. This is the doorway to grace. This is the doorway to spiritual awakening. It's a doorway to healing, doorway to liberation. Is to put down that device of judgmental ego, that guarded, defended ego, and know something greater. Just like Jesus taught, it's through being childlike that greatness comes, that divinity comes, that grace can enter your life. But those of us who think we're, some brilliant philosophical mental mind, it's like, my God, that is a hell world. It's a hell realm, literally. So anyways, to be like a child. Yeah, beautiful, Don. Thank you. Okay, let's hear from Kyle. Hi, Kyle.
Hey, Greg.
Yeah, good to see you.
Good to see you too. Yeah, this talk is really relevant to my question too. This spring I've become rather busy, but it seems like it's all things that God is asking of me.
Yeah.
So part of me is kind of frustrated that I'm so busy. I'll probably barely have time to go to like the retreat, do your retreat in May and stuff like that. Like I'll do it, but I'll barely have time. But yeah, that's just kind of my question, just like, why does God have us do all of these things?
Yeah. Well, why does God have us do all these things? Well, I don't know. I don't know. But I'm gonna challenge you. I mean, it all depends on what God's having you do, but I'm gonna challenge you because I've always been busy. I had kids when I was really young. Can't remember how young I was, but like I might have been 23 when I had my first son. And here I am. I don't know how old I am now, but and I have a whole other family now, but I've always been ridiculously busy. And when you're busy, it's very easy to be an ego, be lost in ego. But again, like what I use, like busy is also a great excuse to call upon grace and to invite God to be with you in all moments. And if we look to any like great master, like many of them, like especially like if you see like someone like Amma, like she works like 20 hours a day, just like 20 hours a day, most days, just ridiculously busy. And of course, who is the doer? It's God is doing through her. And so in the beginning, I'd invite God just to be here with me, to help me, to give me the strength to attend to like all the things I was having to attend to because I had to take care of my teacher. And then there's times when I had to take care of students, and then I'd take care of my family and then pay bills and all, run a household. And, I was just constantly working. And, sometimes God, like if we're really busy, we can look at it like this is karma yoga. This is karma yoga. And so when we're doing karma yoga, we can do karma yoga from a place of will. And if you do so, you will be quickly exhausted. Or we can do karma yoga where we see our life as an ongoing prayer, a conversation, a meditation, while we just happen to be busy. And so, all the time, we're connecting to grace, we're opening to grace, we're inviting grace to flow through us. So in the beginning, we think to be on the spiritual path means we're oming, or chanting our mantra, or, singing bhajans and doing yoga and, going to satsang. But true spiritual practice takes place in every moment. It might be in, having a moment where, like, your husband, your wife, your partner, they're being really mean to you because they're having a hard day. And you pray for them. Or you smile to them, or you give them a big hug, or you get them a special treat, or, you rub their shoulders. You say, hey, I'm here with you. I'm here with you. But sometimes we find ourselves sleeping on the couch, and maybe they're mean or nasty to us. And we're sending them the healing waves of forgiveness. But sometimes we need to call upon grace to come into us first. God, will you help me to forgive this person? Will you send love in their direction? Whatever it is. Will you be with me in traffic? You work in the schools. Will you be with me, these students, or as, you've been traveling a lot, as I travel, will you be with me? Will you sit shotgun with me? And before we break bread, like, are we praying, inviting a blessing? Are we praising God? Are we having gratitude? Are we honoring what's here? And so there's so many ways we can open, we can praise, we can have gratitude, and ask for support, and ask for support. Like, we can do it all simultaneously. And so, I encourage you, I challenge you to see if, you can allow this busyness. Like, if you feel stress in your body, God, will you come here and be with this stress? Will you be with this difficulty? Will you handle this difficulty? Again, like with your students, will you be in their lives? Will you hold them? Will you support them? Will you nourish them? Will you be in my home? Will you be in my car? Will you be in this traffic? Will you be in this anxiety with me? It's like, let's we just sit here because I'm in hell right now. Will you sit here and breathe love into me because I'm really having a hard time? And so I encourage you, Kyle, to play with this. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, like a true non-dual awakening is we see God everywhere. We see it in difficulty. We see it in ease. We see it on the yoga mat. We see it in traffic. We see it within and without. And as we see it so much and so often, eventually all the walls get erased. And we live in a way where there's no walls, when the good, the bad, the ugly is all God, is all grace, is all grace. Like me being sick now for a year and a half is grace. I see the grace in it. It's a tremendous challenge for me physically, and I am getting better, but I see the grace in it. I see God's hand in it. I see her wisdom in it. I see what she's doing. And then also I don't see what she's doing, but I trust in the mystery of it. I trust in the mystery because it's so easy just to go into frustration and say, like, my partner's crazy, my job is crazy, my parents are crazy, everyone's crazy. Life is hard, life is suffering. Like, it's easy to do that. But that's not the truth. The truth is the divine is everywhere and in everything. The good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful, the brilliant, the spacious, the condensed, the contracted, the egoic, the miserable, the holy. It's all grace. It's all grace. And when one is awake, we see this. We see this. We see it in the eyes of Putin. And we see it in our own heart. We see it in everything. Everything, the grace of God. And it can, I'll even say this, it can be utterly disturbing. Utterly disturbing. And then at some point, like, at some point, we're no longer disturbed. We're more just laughing. This too is God. This too is God. But when we have this idea, like you said, well, why does God make things busy sometimes? Maybe God wants you to know her infinite creativity, her infinite doingness, her infinite activity. Like the energy of kundalini is just like the energy of creation. So much divine activity flowing through us. And sometimes we think, no, God is just peace. Just peace. But that's not non-duality. That's very dualistic vision. Is God is in peace, but not in busyness. God is not here when my mind is busy. Like, well, is that true? That's a great question. It's like, is it true? Is it true? And sometimes I just step back and look, what is the space in which all this busyness is happening? Because when we're so busy, we think things are solid, tight, and condensed. But if you step back and look, you see there's so much space and there's so much room for all of this wildness and this difficulty and this challenge. What is that room and what is this challenge? What is the truth of it all? And so anyways, good to be with you, Kyle. Much love. Okay. Well, I thought I saw someone else's hand up. Was it Johan? Johan, if you still have a question, bring it forward. If not, it's okay. And I'll just check out the comments here. Okay. Okay, a lot of praises. Thank you so much. Feel very encouraged. Good. I'm very touched. Y'all see me bawling. Yeah, and sometimes that's what it's like on the press. Sometimes we're crying, and see, that's the grace of letting go. My message was rest, my love, and I will support you. Yeah, and see, this is so beautiful. So Catherine opens, like, we're stressed, we're overwhelmed, and then we just open, and we hear a divine voice that says, rest, my love. I will support you. So can we hear the silent truth in that? Can we hear the silent truth in this? And I've learned it takes a little bit of skill to learn to be able to open and hear the voice of God. A little bit of skill. And the skill is really quieting your mind and learning how to listen here in your heart. Sometimes we say a prayer and we listen in our mind. And that would be like if you spoke Russian to me and I'm listening in my mind, I have no idea what you're saying. No idea. But sometimes if I listen to my heart and you speak Russian to me, I get a sense of what you're saying. I get a sense of this. And I actually have these Ukrainian neighbors, and I love them because they're straight refugees from the war. And so as they talk Ukrainian to me, and I smile and I nod and I open my heart and I can feel what they're saying. I can feel what they're saying. So as I get it, I'm like, oh yeah, okay. Like we're on the same page here. We're on the same page. Okay, let's hear from Johan, and then I'll cut y'all loose. Johan, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, good to see you.
Yeah, thanks. Good to see you as well. Yeah, I had a question, and I'm still gonna ask it. Right now, I'm feeling a lot of grace that came up in the last minutes of the satsang.
Yeah.
And yeah, my question was, so at the beginning, during the meditation at the beginning of the satsang, things were fine until you asked to ask God for what's the next step.
Yeah.
And a part of me didn't want to hear it. Part of me was afraid of what
Yeah.
I could find out.
Yeah.
It's afraid that I might get confused by my ego, and yeah, afraid that God will ask me to do something like leave my relationship, quit my job, or do something that feel forced, or and yeah, so I think this part of me needs some care.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I can say this, that grace always will give you something greater. But the little caveat I'll tell you is with time. So sometimes grace will tell us, hey, it's time to be done with this relationship or this job. Sometimes God will say that. Sometimes life will say that to us. But that is only so that a greater relationship, a greater vocation can come forward. Now, sometimes we're invited to let go of something, and we have to walk, through a cold, shadowy valley for a period of time. But then, given some time, we find, oh, there's something much greater on the other side. I've never heard anyone say, I listened to the voice of God and it was a big mistake. Often if we listen to a voice that's a mistake, it's our egoic nature. And most people on their deathbed, wish they listened to the voice of truth, the voice of their heart, much more sooner, and didn't waste so much time, spinning their wheels in the mud. Spinning their wheels in the mud. So life is always trying to give you something greater. Something greater. And so, I encourage you to look. The thing that we have to be careful of, like with discernment, is like if you have a bad day at work or a bad day in relationship, or like if we're in a long-term committed relationship, if we're having a bad season, because that's something we know about, if we're if we're in a marriage or whatever, we might have a bad season. If you ask your ego will always say, yeah, leave, get out of there, run. But the voice of truth, it will come with hope. It won't be a fight or flight response. So the ego, it's often communicates with fight or flight, run or fight, get out of there, bail, abandon ship. That's how the ego speaks. And so it's very important to have discernment around that. The voice of God, the voice of grace, will speak to us in a quiet way, a soft way, but in a very powerful way. Now, the thing you brought up, Johanna, was beautiful, is when it speaks to you, it's the truth. And often it does scare our ego. But it scares our ego because we have to let go of some level of control. That's what's being asked. We're being asked to let go of some level of control. We're being asked to walk into the unknown. To walk into the unknown. But when we have faith that God is here, that God is with us, walking into the unknown, it's not really so scary. It's like, what does God have for me? Like, what's next? What's next? What's next on the path? Like, what is the truth? What's the the greater thing. The greater thing. And so if we're really attached to our ego's often really scared of the voice of God. Because again, our ego likes to hold that steering wheel, hold it tight. It likes to be in charge. But after we've matured a little bit on the path, like after we've surrendered and trusted and saw that, oh yeah, this worked out so much better. And then we surrendered again, we trusted and we realized, oh my God, this worked out so much. We do that a bunch of times. And then at some point, when we hear the voice of God, we're like, oh yeah, thank you. Thank you for showing me the way. Thank you. Like the resistance starts to fall away. And so I encourage you, like when we develop this type of conversation with God, this type of openness, this receptivity, let's start with some small things. Like let's not start with our career right out of the gates. Like let's just start with just little things. Should I eat this food? And just see, like, do you get a yes or a no? And if it's yes, just try it. See if it's your ego coming in there and like trying to manipulate and, co-opt the voice of God, or if it's the truth. Or if it's the truth. Should I call this friend? And you get a yes, then you give them a call. And they're, oh, I'm so happy you called. And often, I'll ask God, like, should I call my mom? I hear, not right now. Not right now. I'm like, okay, that's great. And then later in the day, I'll hear, try now. Try now. And I call and she picks up. She says, oh, I just got home from the hospital. I'm so glad you called. And it's like beautiful. Beautiful. And so just play around with it. Just play with your intuition and opening in this receptive way. Start with some little things. And when we bring up, big topics like say our career or relationship or moving, like any of these kind of big ones, like if we are reasonably awake, we don't need God to tell us it's time to be done. It's time to move on. It's helpful when God tells us that. It's helpful. But normally, like if we're reasonably awake and in touch with our heart, in touch with our truth, we know that there's a greater truth. We know that. Or we know, no, this is a great place for me. This is exactly where I'm supposed to be. And when it's exactly where you're supposed to be, you normally don't question it. You normally don't question it. Now, I'll add one caveat. Some people, this is an Enneagram 6 thing, for those of you who know the Enneagram, they question everything. They doubt everything, and they're just always in their head doubting. And that's a whole path in and of itself. It's like going from the path of doubt to the path of knowing. But for everyone else on the path, like you just listen to your heart. And so that's one more thing I'd like to say is listening to the voice of God and listening to your heart, listening to God's truth and your truth. It's all the same voice. There's not the voice of your heart and the voice of God. It's that one voice. And this is where we could be a good Buddhist or we could be a good Christian. Either way, like you open to the truth, and the truth is going to come, whether it comes from heaven or it comes from your heart. Heaven is your heart. And so listen here. Listen literally in your chest. If you listen in your head, like we can have like 6 different arguments going on at the same time. 6 different arguments. And, we can spin in a whole world of analytical, philosophical thought, spun through doubt and confusion and great rational insight and all kinds of things. But again, the truth is always simple. It's always simple. It's always direct. And it will come with this quiet wind. And when you're open to it, Like your soul will say, okay. And there's this feeling of, this makes sense. Of course. Of course. Of course. When it's the mind will say something and then it will doubt it. And it'll say something else and it'll doubt it. And then again, it's this realm of division. But when the truth comes from your heart, there's this feeling of course. Of course. And again, it may scare your ego, but like, there's just a sense of knowing like, oh yeah, of course. Of course. And so can we trust in that? And for a lot of people, and I'll say this to you, Johan, it would be helpful if you get out of here and bring awareness more into your heart, more into your belly. You start coming way down into your belly and you ask a question what the truth is, you'll feel like this rumbling of power. And I'll be like, yeah, this is the way. This is the way. It feels radically different than the insecurity of the mind. Insecurity of the mind is a hell realm. So anyways, okay, I'll cut you all loose. Just a reminder, May 12th through the 14th, a retreat. It is during Mercury. It's at the end of Mercury in retrograde. Sign up sooner rather than later. Don't sign up at the end and tell me you didn't get your link because Mercury's screwing with you. So sign up sooner rather than later. It's live on the retreat. It's live on the website right now. And so let us all continue to open to grace and allow this grace to flow through you into your life, into your vocation, into your family, into your relationships, blessing yourself first and foremost and blessing those around you. Let this grace shine through you. Shine through you. Okay. So much love to each of you. Good night, everyone. I'll see y'all soon.